Hey, what's up, everybody? I just wanted to please ask everybody sign up to my Patreon, patreon.com, MikeGrib8, just like my Twitter at. It really helps support the podcast, and yeah, I'm really need the help from you guys. I really appreciate everybody who has signed up so far. So thank you so much. So we can keep doing this work on improving scouting and just learning and spreading knowledge about basketball scouting. Really appreciate all the listeners, and if you can't, it's understandable. But if you could, please help me out on Patreon, patreon.com at MikeGrib8. Thank you so much.
It's a tough question to answer because we're never starting from ground zero. It's not like I'm just picking up a book or a laptop or whatever, going to a random game and just saying like, well, who the hell do I look for? Because of the work we put in and the seeds we planted, you kind of always have a conversation going about, what recruits look good for the, moving forward and certain classes and all that stuff. So you just kind of start to build relationships based off that.
Yeah, so exactly, people that you trust already, and through talking to
Exactly.
them, you already have like an idea, and then like the stuff.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
but what's it called? How big are you on going like to the actual games? Because like some people like say like you have to see, like if I don't see the guys in person, like I don't even like think anything of them until I actually get to see them in person. But some people like more like, oh, if I just watch the film, like I could go to a few games. Like how big is that for you?
I got to put my eyes on these kids. I gotta, for me, it's a more holistic approach. We're recruiters, we're talent evaluators, but it's a personal relationship. It's a personal journey we're taking with these guys. So I have to see them play. I don't want to say I have to see them play in person as much as I actually have to meet them as a person. You know what I mean? Like, I think you can kind of get through, I think you can kind of assume and make a great read on a player based off of the film, but who are they? What kind of work do they put in? Do they love basketball? Do they love what basketball provides? Do they, are they grinders? Are they guys that when they have practice, they're like, fuck, I got to go to practice. Like, you know what I mean? Like those nuances are things that you can kind of figure out as you build a relationship and get a chance to meet the guy. And then, again, in person, look, I'm not going to name a recruit's name, but last year, Aaron and I were at a game for another recruit and ended up seeing somebody else who in person just looked like the second coming of LeBron. I mean, it was crazy. He was having an incredible game. Now subsequently, he had a great year, but it hasn't necessarily translated. They went undrafted. They're in a good spot in my opinion, but seeing them in person didn't tell the whole story because when it got down to the get down, when we started breaking down, their off the court stuff, it didn't really match what we saw on the court, if that makes sense. So that's how I look at it.
You talked about like there's people that do analytics at the agency stuff. What's it called? What about you personally? Do you like focus on that, or do you mostly like just let the other people that are experts do that?
Nah.
And kind of, yeah.
If you know me, I have a saying: let the artists be artists. Let them create the art. You know what I mean? Like I'm not an analytical mind. I've never approached basketball from that way. I played my whole life. It's been something I've been involved with my entire life. So I feel like there's a different pulse, just a different energy I get versus trying to crunch numbers and figure out who's a player that way. Like it just doesn't resonate the same way. I respect it. I think it's a necessary evil. I don't want to call it evil shit, but it's necessary. And I think the best basketball minds are able to, do both. But I don't, I'd be lying if I said I like went through and started crunching numbers and shit. Like I don't do that. Our guys do that really well. I let them do that. I let them tell me the story, and then I try to, finish out the rest of it with actually watching them play or interacting with them.
Like I mean, obviously I know you like for the listeners and stuff. So like one thing I think you do really well is like, yeah, like you said, like you kind of let the people like the analytics people like do their thing and like trust, and you really take their opinion into account. Like the like the eye test stuff pretty well, but like Like, how do you like blend that? Like, let's say there's like a prospect that maybe you see differently than the numbers. Like, how do you decide like which one is right? How to weigh those?
Well, look, I don't think numbers tell the whole story, if I'm being honest. There's immeasurables that I think that'll never, you can't measure a guy's heart. You can't measure a guy's energy. You can't measure a guy's dedication. You can't measure a guy's, um, how good he is as a teammate, as a listener, as a leader. Those are things that you can't really crunch a number and figure out, So, um, that leads to the whole idea of me. I'm very passionate about believing in our guys and putting our eyes on them and really believing in them as basketball players. But, that being said, I feel like I'd be, it's like fighting an uphill battle. It's almost like the people that said the internet would never last and shit like that. Like rap's never going to be a real a real genre of music. Like it's just not real. Like the analytical portion of basketball is extremely important, and I don't trust blindly. I trust guys that I trust. You know what I'm saying? So like, it's easy for me to, take some of the references or ideas from the group and trust it because we have a track record and we have a personal relationship and shit like that. But I will say, I don't think the numbers do tell the whole story. So it's for me, you got to blend them both to really be good at this job and really to be successful at analyzing basketball players, in my opinion.
How do you think like your approach like working for an agency like differs from like more like a typical like scout for a team or like a coach recruiting or somebody like that? Do you see like a major difference there? And what do you think it would be? Or do you not really think about it, what other people are doing and just
Yeah, man, you know me on a personal level, man. I don't care what anybody else is doing. I'm not interested. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
the business has taught me, um, it's a lot of clownery going on out here, honestly. You know what I mean? It's a lot of blind leading the blind. So it's like, one thing I've always known, and my parents put this in me, and it's just like run your own race. I think, the way we've tried to be innovative about our approach at the agency with analyzing and evaluating talent, I think it's forward thinking. I think it's kind of outside of the box, and it's our own lane. It's what we do the best in our industry, in our opinion. In my opinion, I'll say. Shit. I don't necessarily know that being in the gym 1,000 days a year out of 365 is like the best way to recruit or scout. I mean, I think it's a shout out to the scouts that do it. But shit, you can get on Synergy, man. You can watch some games. You know what I mean? Like I think you can get a better idea really kind of sitting in and digging into the film. It's the other stuff that you got to go see these kids for. You got to go, evaluate them for. So, yeah, hopefully I answered your question. I have no idea what other guys are doing other than what you guys tell me, and I don't really give a shit as long as we're having success and doing what we do here. So,
No, that's fair. I mean, what's go like how do you think like your experiences like playing organized basketball, like maybe like listeners that don't have as much like experience in the in that arena, like what do you think some maybe advantages or maybe even disadvantages do you have from the experiences do you have, the things you understand that people may not pick up on, stuff like that?
I will say I don't think there are any disadvantages. Shit, to be honest with you, I think what the only disadvantage that I could see is the idea that if you didn't play, you can't have an opinion on basketball. I think that's not really necessarily the right approach. I think, I mean, I played, like I said, my whole life. This is all I've done for a long time. So there are nuances about basketball that I feel like you just can't get if you didn't experience it. And I think that honestly is one of the main reasons I'm in this business is to relate and and help these guys navigate their careers, but also understanding them from a player's perspective, like the shit they go through, some of the trials and tribulations, the wins, you got to celebrate those as well. I think it's honestly an advantage, in terms of how I approach things and what I do and how we operate at AMR. I think, the fact that I have a background in basketball that is, it's pretty solid, that it's very helpful, because you don't want to get drowned out by the numbers. It's very possible in some situations. And, I try to make sure that I'm the guy that's always fighting for the dumb jock, about it earlier. Like, I think game prep, like, it's funny. I'll watch dudes in layup lines and be like, I'll be off put by how they approach the fucking layups. You know what I mean? Like, and mind you, as a player, I'm not saying you got to go full game speed and do all this stuff, but you can just kind of tell by how guys shoot around, how they approach preparation for a game, where they're at with it mentally. And, again, not everybody has the same approach. So it's very nuanced. Like, this business is crazy because, like, there's archetypes, 3-and-D wings, the center, shit, you can break down archetypes, so forgive me, but there's all these archetypes now. So the numbers can create kind of a broad foundation for what these archetypes might be, right? Like, this kid fits into this category, this kid fits into that category, but they're all individual people. So you have to understand and recognize that from the beginning and, like, kind of approach it that way. Like, some guy like Austin Reaves, we represent Austin Reaves. And one of the first questions I asked Austin, I remember picking him up from the airport when he was coming for pre-draft. And I was like, yo, why do you do this? Like, I know you love basketball and shit, but, like, what's the why? And he was like, honestly, to tell everybody that doubted me to kiss my ass, and it was a little bit more flagrant than that, but I can respect that. Like, that's a motivator. That's something that will never leave him. That dude's been doubted his entire life. So I don't have to question in year 6 of his NBA career, like, is he going to come out and bring it that night? Like, that's all he knows how to do. You know what I mean? And that's just by circumstance. So you got to get to know these guys. And watching the game, I can see, yes, there are absolutely little things I can see, from, wrong reads to communication errors to all, I mean, there's all manner of things that, I can put myself back in that position, sitting on that bench or playing on that court, and, and kind of get a better evaluation from, my perspective, versus what I'm seeing. So I don't know. I can't really, it's hard for me to, like, say, oh, nobody else can feel that way. I have no idea how other people feel. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm just watching hoops and approaching it the way I approach it. So I have no idea.
Do you have any, like, anecdotes where you maybe were watching a guy and then, like, you relate a personal experience to that, like, to, like, kind of understanding them better through your own, something that you went
Yeah,
through?
I mean, this is very minor and random, and I don't even know if I should
That-
name drop, but watching Michigan State a couple years ago, headed to halftime, Gabe Brown and Tom Izzo get into a huge, like, argument, and I know both of these people on a personal level, and the media and Twitter is like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And it put me back in. I remember my coach said something crazy to me my freshman year, and I was literally going to fight the guy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, like, my coaches had to step in and my teammates. And honestly, it wasn't a deterrent for how well I played afterwards. It was more of a motivator. You know what I mean? Like, so I expected, those guys to come out and feel closer, fight harder, because that kind of energy, if the people involved, isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, stuff happens in those gyms, stuff happens at practice, stuff happens in those locker rooms, and, like, it's not always sweet. So that's something I could just think of off the top of my head. Like, it's like, like, I figured they would come out and have a lot of motivation versus coming out and folding. And they didn't end up winning the game. They ended up, I think, going to overtime and taking.
So yeah, like, it seemed like you talk a lot about, like, what I think is a big advantage for you is kind of, like, understanding, like, the personal and, like, the individual, like, aspect of different players and prospects, and, like, being able to relate. Not to say that all basketball players have the same personality, obviously, but, like,
No,
in
right.
general, like, I feel like you, like, yeah, that ability to relate to them and, like, just understand, like, their motivations and drives and stuff, like you said, like, with Austin, you asked him, like, why do you play and stuff like that. That's, like,
Right.
a big strength for you. So yeah, like, what are things in particular do you look, like, personally in players? Like, what are indicate, like, maybe guys, obviously, like, guys that are very competitive is, like, a common one people will say, but, like, maybe, like, to go into more, like, particular, like, personality traits and stuff, do you think are important?
I like guys who are self-motivated. I like guys that have a love for basketball. I think the higher you go in this business, and I don't mean, like, on my side, I mean, like, the business of basketball, the more you gotta love that shit. Like, college basketball was great that are committed to the game, because it gets hard, man. And there are days where you're just like, why am I doing this? Am I meant to be doing this? Even if you're the man, and you gotta have that self-motivation, you gotta have that resilience, you gotta have that mental fortitude. And I think for me, it's you want competitors, yes, but I also want guys who had to get their shit out the mud. Like I love players like that. Like, and you can be a top 5 recruit or whatever and still have to have gotten it out the mud. But more often than not, the guys that were undervalued and overlooked are the guys that I tend to gravitate towards, because I know that they are doing it from a spot that is genuine, and they're not like, they're not waiting on somebody to give them some shit. They're going to get it, because that's all they know. So that I feel like that resonates with me, because that's how I was. That's how that's been my story. That's the agency story. We've got our shit out the mud. We didn't have a homie, a hookup, a friend. We didn't have any of that. We just put our boots on the ground and grinded that shit out. So I respect those guys, and I like to work with guys like that, because there's a sense of gratification seeing them get wins, and there's also a sense of loyalty to the people that helped you get where you're going, because again, people weren't just handing shit out to you. You had to go get it. So that would be my take on that.
What about like guys that like I mean, maybe the money thing is like a little bit too much, but like somebody that like maybe has some off-court struggles at a young age, like are you a big believer that guys could like kind of grow as they like we just talked about
Absolutely.
like how we're in our 30s now, we're
Bro,
mature.
absolutely, bro. Look, Reggie Berry, I lead with grace, man. Like, who am I to like nail somebody to the cross for a mistake? Like, shit happens, man. Like, anybody watching this, I don't give a shit if it's one person or a million. Every single person has done things in their lives that are like, they're like, damn, I wish I didn't do that, or wish I could take that back. I mean, it's just life. So because these guys have a platform, they're under a microscope, and shit happens, and you know, they are vilified in some instances. Now, there's some, there's some things that I might consider crossing the line, and I feel like maybe are things that I couldn't get with. But like again, who am I? I think everybody should be allowed the opportunity to grow. And think of what we're talking about, bro. When I was playing college basketball from 18 to 21. That person is like so gone, and like, you know what I mean? Like that he's in here, but he's just completely different in terms of my approach, my maturity, the things I like, the things I don't like. Like I'm just a different person, and that all comes with time and wisdom and growth and all that shit. So these kids that we're dealing with, they're young, and they've got a lot to handle. So like, I'm not mad when mistakes happen, as long as you learn from them, rectify them, man up. That's big. Like, man up, own up, and like try to get better.
Do you think like the stuff you talked about that you really appreciate, like being an underdog and like get like what's it called, coming up from like the bottom, like you talked about, like do you think that's like an indicator that like a guy could outplay expectations, or do you more so just gravitate towards those guys because you have a personal like for those type of guys?
I think it's a little bit of both. They're underestimated, and if we're at the point where we're recruiting them and believing them, then I do believe there's probably, they got more in the tank than people may realize. But yeah, it's just their heart, man. That heart, you can't crunch all the numbers in the world. You can't measure a man's heart. You feel me? So like, I'm just gonna rock with people who are real, who are authentic, who are grinders, who aren't silver spoon people, man. Like I don't have anything against people that were giving shit, but like I wasn't. So like, let's get it. I'd rather rock with guys that understand that, that type of energy versus the other. But I don't discriminate, man. Just because you were handed everything doesn't mean you can't be a great basketball player. You don't love the game or whatever, or you're not right for our agency. It's just, again, it's all personal conversations and situational.
Yeah, so it feels like there's, what, maybe you disagree with this, but like from what I understand is you would say like there's like maybe like 800 or even 1,000 guys in the world that could play in the NBA, but it's separate. Like a lot of the separation comes from the guys that really put in the work and really like have like an affinity towards the game, like and really.
Oh, no question. No, don't get it twisted. NBA talent is out in the streets and like abroad and like for sure. I mean, toot my own horn, it ain't really nothing to toot, but like when I was still playing, like I was playing all the pro-ams locally, and like like a dork. I saved all my little newspaper clippings. I would give out 20 balls and get busy. And these are reputable NBA guys I was playing against and with. But I wasn't in NBA, you know, and again, it's all, I'm not saying they just worked harder than me and that's why. Like that could have been the case, but you know, it's all situational. But by and large, the guys in the league are grinders that have worked for it, that have earned it. And just getting there is a accomplishment in itself, but being able to play in the NBA and stay there is a different thing. So, you know, most of those guys are guys that are committed to the grind, that have been, you know, that's just what they do. So, so there is something to be said about those hard workers for sure.
Is like what's called like current ability, and then projection is everything that goes into predicting them in like 5 years. So it's like age, and then like physical talent. Yeah, like Intel is like the personal stuff we've been talking about, and then like production is like could be statistical, but then you could make another category which is like eye test, which is, you know, what you see right now from them. And but yeah, that's like, I will, like, when we have the people we've had on so far, I always ask them like, what do they think of it kind of similar, or do they have like another kind of system in their head that they kind of use, or like maybe they don't?
No, this is it's funny, man. It's crazy because you're one of the best in the business. You literally, I clearly, you know, I believe that for strongly about how you evaluate talent. And it's funny because some of these things I quite naturally do in my head, I think, but I don't have any, like, I don't have a tangible resource or thought process when it comes to evaluating guys. Like, it's like I look and I can pretty much tell pretty quickly if I think you can play basketball. Like, so there's tons of guys that, you know, that have great production, you know, or their value at the moment is whatever. But there's just something about their basketball game that doesn't correlate or cross over. Shit, if I'm being even more transparent, you know, I've been watching a lot of NBA because it's getting ready to start up, and we're working with our guys, and like, it's alarming how many guys in the NBA I see that I feel like don't really know how to play basketball. Like, and I think that is the next. People ask me like, what's next? This is me putting my whole prediction hat on. To me, the next level of growth in basketball, in my opinion, is, it sounds crazy, is learning how to play. It's like, it seems like it's lost. Like, everybody knows the drills and does the workouts and all this other kind of shit, but I don't see a lot of guys that know how to play basketball. Like, and it's a distinction. Like, it's definitely different. Like, you can go through all the drills in the world, have all the trainers you want, but there's an IQ to basketball that I feel like it's just kind of gotten lost, because everybody knows how to Euro step and everybody knows how to go through their legs and dunk and all that other shit. Like, that's cool, but I need you to be able to hoop, because when LeBron or Giannis or Jokic is like out there on the court and like orchestrating their, you know, what they do, being the artists that they are, like, you need guys around that understand situational, you know, situations. You need guys that understand, look, all right, they need me to rebound right now. They need me to defend. They need me to cut. They need me to, this next 5 minutes, I got to do X, Y, Z. That's just knowing how to play basketball.
The problem, I think, is you can't almost improve that. Like you just kind of like have it, or like, at least that's
right. It's right. That's the crazy. Like, so that's, I have sons, right? So my sons, I don't know if they're gonna play or not, but they're around it. They see it, and so for me, it's like my dad. Like, my dad taught me the game, you know. And now you got to learn by trial and error. So you got to go out there, go get your head knocked in, play games, run sets, flops, slobs, all that stuff. But he taught me the game. Like, we would be watching a game, and he would, back then you couldn't pause TVs and shit, but he'd mute it and be like, "What did he just do? Why was that important?" Shit like that. You know what I mean? And like, it would challenge my brother and I to like think and have answers. You know what I mean? Like, oh, he should have done this, or what should he have done differently on that fast break? Stuff like that. And like, it sounds crazy, but it's like anything else, bro. You learn algebra, you learn fucking statistics, like, learn how to play basketball. And I don't know that it's being taught, I don't want to say properly, but I just don't know that guys are learning how to play as much as they're learning the skill set. Like, all these guys are skilled. Like, they can do all this shit, but like, you can't hoop, bro. So like, I need you to be able to hoop, because you can do all that all you want if you can't apply it. You know, like these dribbles and these euros and all that. How many guys do I saw a euro last night? I was at the Brooklyn Miami game. I saw a euro and I was like, yo, he didn't have the euro. Like, fucking go lay the ball up.
Like, is that like your prescription for it? Is like to watch more film, like you talked about, like with your dad, you like he would pause and ask you questions?
Yeah, you know what?
Like...
I think film. Look, I'll be honest. Like, I wasn't a huge film guy. Like, it used to bore the pants off of me in college, but I started to see the results. You know, like my coach is a big film guy, my initial coach, and it sucked. I mean, it was more the way he watched film. Like, it was silent, and you got to remember, I went to school in 2000, 2004, so like, it was. I don't even know. I think we were rewinding tapes and shit back then. So I don't remember, but it was like, it sucked, you know. But you pick up a lot of stuff that way. You know what I mean? Like, you can learn what you're doing well, what you're not doing well, what the other team can do. Whether, you know, it's just a lot about film that really helps.
Like, or like somebody who doesn't have like you know, a ton of like personal experience in the game and really understanding for, you know, individual personalities of players, maybe as intimately as you do. Like, what are maybe some indicators that can help me you know, recognize that when I'm watching tape or even going to a game in person, something like that?
Good question. If you're not gonna have any physical interaction, like if you're just kind of evaluating, then go back and look for dogs, like people that you believe in. Like, I'm trying to think. I mean, Draymond's the easiest guy to kind of throw out there, or, you know, guys like that, you know, have kind of made their living off of being grinders, you know, tough guys, you know, guys that are able to affect basketball without having some kind of elite level skill set. I mean, then I guess I should also say, look for guys that do have those elite level skill sets and that killer instinct as well, and like try to evaluate them there, and then see if there's any ways to cross reference or see if they have any of the same stuff. I mean, it's a hard question to ask because, you know, I feel like, again, because I played, I can kind of watch and be like, oh, that kid got harder, or he doesn't. And then I have the fortune of being able to have conversations with them. So I have, you know, there's questions that I ask or we ask that kind of tell the tale of who I'm dealing with, you know. So it's a hard thing to articulate and like try to spell out. You know what I mean? Like, it's tough, bro. Like, some of these dudes, because here's the thing, you can't. Somebody's gonna be a dog and they give their money and the dog's gone because they don't need the money anymore. You know what I mean? Like, they've made it. So it's just like, it's all situational. You know what I mean? That's why you got to try and do as much, like you said on your last thing. You had the intel portion. You know, really finding out who they are. You know, because that tells the tale a lot of times. Like, you know, you don't really necessarily have to have played high level basketball if you get enough intel and people are like, yo, this kid lives in the gym. This kid does this, or this kid quits on his teammates, or whatever it may be. Like,
questions you ask, or if it's not a trade secret or anything.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Yeah, I can't. You know, come on, bro. You know what time it is. I can't give out the secrets, but there's a couple specific questions we ask that are like, all right, like, one thing I know, and Aaron will tell you, like, I always say this to families, kids. Everybody wants to go to the NBA, but are you ready to be a professional? Like, are you ready to be a pro? Like, that's a big thing. Those are two different things. Like, NBA basketball is cool, but there's a professional lifestyle that goes with it. So are you prepared to not have somebody waking you up, or not have somebody saying, yo, did you get these extra shots in? Or not? Like, all that shit matters, because those are the people that end up staying in the NBA, having great careers. And it kind of dovetails back to the whole point of like recruiting grinders, guys that know they got to get it out the mud, guys that are self-motivated, like all that stuff, because it kind of takes care of that other end. Like, I don't have to worry, is Austin Reaves going to go put extra work in? That's all he knows how to do. I don't have to worry, Jake LaRavia going to go get extra shots in. Jake would build a bed in the facility if he could. You know what I'm saying? So like, that shit on our end, like, it, you know, it helps tell the story and helps kind of figure out, you know, who you want to invest in. And I don't mean just financially, just like from an energy standpoint, man. We're doing life together. So I'm taking time away from my family, my kids, my wife, to pour into my work and my business. I wanted to be with people who I believe in and people who believe in themselves and shit like that. So hopefully it helps, Mike.
It's interesting because I have a theory. What's it called? Like, because sometimes people talk about like off-court intelligence and how that could affect the game, and I don't think like most I think agree that it doesn't actually affect like your ability on the court, but at the same time, it may affect you like from the perspective what you talked about. That's like the theory I have is that like people with like better like focus could like be more self-motivating as far as like scheduling out when they wake up and when
Right,
they
right.
like get their gym hours, and that like kind
Yeah.
of indirectly plays into their ability to improve and stuff like that.
No,
That's
I
kind of
agree. I agree. But again, I always want to like I'm not the most organized guy. You know what I mean? So like, but that doesn't mean I can't find success. You know what I mean? So it doesn't always necessarily. It's not mutually exclusive. But I do agree. Like, your smarter guys tend to be smarter basketball players. Tend to be self motivated guys that know they got to put the work in to get the results. Yada yada yada. So that's not a crazy theory. I think it's pretty on brand. I just always say it's basketball. These are people we're dealing with. Like everybody's different. So you can be a big brain on the court and be a complete fucking idiot for hooping. You know what I mean? Like it just depends. So
One question I had is how do you distinct between work ethic and like leadership skills? And like kind of going off of that, like there's a trend of like elite players in college, right? They bolster like high usage in college and then they have to go play like a smaller role player level role in the NBA. So what kind of like
mhm.
traits do you think are common to those type of players?
To be a good leader, you got to be a good follower. And I think guys that are high usage guys on their team. So man, that's a good question. You got to figure out how to play a role in the league. Like 2, 3 guys at max are going to be him. After that, figure it out. And I think again, it kind of goes back to what Mike and I were just talking about with the intelligence. Like, and you weren't on earlier, Ab. Like, hoopers understand hoopers. A guy that understands basketball at a high level, an actual basketball player like a hooper, they know like, all right, like I hoop, at a high level. I got on the court with some people. I'm like, damn, that dude's better than me. How can I be effective playing off of him? Like, what role can I play in this situation to be the most efficient version of myself that's going to help us get a dub? You know what I'm saying? So, like, that's just a mentality that was in me, but I also had to get my shit out the mud. Like, I wasn't some huge 5-star blue chip recruit. Like, I had to grind and get it out the mud and get wins that way. So, like, I'm wired, to be able to fit a role if I need to, because at some point, the higher you go in this basketball thing, you're going to have to, if you are a good leader, that means you were a good follower and you understand what it takes to be a good leader. If this all makes sense, I'm trying to like big brain this shit together. And so when you make that next step, if you want to play basketball bad enough in the NBA, you can evaluate a situation and say, all right, my team needs me to defend right now. So that's how I'm going to be effective. That's how I'm going to help us get a win. That's how I'm going to get on the court. So I may not have been a defender in college, but I'm going to be the best defender on this team. But that's what happened with Austin last year. Like, we had to swear up and down the NBA teams that this kid could play defense at an NBA level. And ironically, that's the thing that got him on the court last year. And that's the thing that kept him on the court last year was his defense. And so now he's considered, this great team/ball defender. When initially coming into the league, they were like, yo, can he stay in front of people?
What about like chemistry? Like you would agree that like certain players could be like a bigger total than the sum of its parts, if you know what I mean? Like through have you like had experiences with different teams that have like great off-court kind of chemistry or like maybe on-court? This don't or how correlated are the things? I'm sure there's
Yeah,
some
no,
correlation.
back in the day, I won a MAC championship, right? We loved each other. All of us weren't best friends, but there was a respect there for each other's game and for our roles that we played on the team. And I think in turn, we still all were really tight. You know what I mean? Like, I think that is huge. And Aaron and I were just talking about this when it comes to front offices. Like, I think there's a disconnect, in my opinion, that, you got big brain analytics guys, you got hoopers that evaluate talent, you got some kind of mesh of that in these front offices, but there's rarely a guy or people that understand, like, all right, we bring in XYZ player. how do they fit? Now you hear people say, "Oh yeah, how are they gonna?" But like genuinely, like what do they do off the court? What is their off the court lifestyle like? Like, does it mesh with Memphis, for example? There's that grit and grind culture there. You know, they're bringing in certain guys that if they don't meet the criteria in terms of the fit with Ja and Steven Adams and Triple J and all those guys, then they just won't bring you in. And it's that important to them. And I'm not saying it's not important to any of the other 29 teams, but I can say for sure, like that's an approach that they take. I've found my most success when I'm working with and around people that have the same common goal, and they care for one another, because I want to see my brothers win as much as they want to see me win, and vice versa. So
Can we see that on the court? Like if I don't, obviously I'm not inside the locker rooms. Is there anything I could like look for on film to kind of like pick up on teams with that?
yeah, just how they communicate, body language. You know what I mean? Like when shit is going bad, how's everybody acting? You know what I mean? Like, things would get rough for us. As I'm going back to when I was playing, and like, but we just knew, like, we'd be like, bro, let's figure this shit out. You know what I mean? We've been through so much together. We can weather this storm and figure it out. And there was a camaraderie there that you could see on the court. Shit, when we were blowing kids out the gym, you could see. I go back and watch the old tapes now every now and again, and like on ESPN, we're literally making like inside jokes as we're making shots and doing stuff on the court because we were that close as a team. So you can see how people interact with one another, how they react to failures, how they react to wins, like all that stuff. And I think, I don't know how much you can see literally on film, like synergy, but like if you're in the gym or at a game, like watch that stuff. Like when a guy gets subbed out, how does he come to the bench? Like what's his reaction when a teammate that gets subbed in does something that, should maybe have them on the bench a little longer. Like all those little things, like you can evaluate and see like, all right, this kid, he's here to win basketball games. He's not just here to win, his own personal, whatever it might be. So
it's funny because it just occurred to me because you were saying like it's a good thing, and I mean it is like in the moment, but I was thinking like some guys made like they have great chemistry within a certain group of guys in a team, but then when you're looking at projection, maybe outside that context, they'll no longer be as comfortable and as effective. So I'm almost looking from the opposite end of things. You know what I mean?
No, I got you. I mean, look, it's basketball, man. Like that's what I'm saying. Like there's evaluating and analytical stuff that you just can't. It's a human where it's humans playing. You know what I mean? So it's some guys gonna click better with other guys. Some guys like we talked about Draymond earlier, and like I have no idea. Everybody's for years been like, what does Draymond look like away from the Warriors? Like, who knows? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. Sure. Like the Spurs, for example, but then we see often like guys leave that team and no longer be as, effective and productive and stuff like that.
Yeah. Your environment is a huge, huge indication of the success you'll have. And like that is for everybody. Like, again, you made a great point. There's 800,000 people in the world that probably can play in the NBA, but it's only a certain amount that get in there. And a lot of that is strategy. A lot of that is situational. A lot of that is, it's huge. Draymond gets drafted to Milwaukee Bucks. Do we ever hear about him? Who knows? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. But, if you're in the right situation, you get the right results. So that's a big thing that we try to do. Make sure that we're strategizing to get our guys in fits that make the most sense for them.
But it's interesting. Also, me and Avinash talked about this on another episode. But with Draymond, like people often say, like you just said in the it's not just you. Like a ton of people I've heard say, like, oh, if he'd be in a different place, he wouldn't develop the same. Like he's improved the shooting a ton. He's gotten much better shape. He's gotten defensively improved a ton. But at the same time, when he was just coming out of the draft, analytics were super high on him. Like a ton of the best models already had him like top 5 in that draft and stuff that. Yeah, so it's really interesting how sometimes the eye test is able to catch on things that analytics can, and then you have the opposite where it seems like we don't really know why, but analytics are able seemingly at least to catch on things. So it's like,
well, I mean, he didn't have the eye test back then. If you think about it, right? Like he wasn't as good as a shape, undersized, whatever position he was predicted to play. Like, and that was back when the NBA was first getting used to the idea that maybe basketball was positionless. Maybe everybody didn't have to fit into you're 6'2", you're a point guard, you're 6'6", you're a wing, like that whole idea. And not to say that the NBA hasn't seen people play different positions and different sizes and all that stuff, but I don't know. I think I think it's a newer concept that, you can kind of play guys everywhere. And so you're right, like who knows, but that's a big reason why we marry the two, because knowing Draymond had that type of analytical profile, and then knowing who he is, I think for us that would have been somebody we would have loved to.
Are there any skills that aren't necessarily improvable with like a killer work ethic?
Yeah, knowing how to play. I don't know how to, like, you know what I mean?
We
like
talked
we
about
talked about that
this,
earlier.
Yeah.
You can do all the drills you want, bro. Like I see these kids all day. I mean, that's the new rage anyway. Everybody's a trainer, everybody's in the gym, cool. But actually knowing how to apply that shit, during a game, situational, that's the biggest that's the biggest issue. Guys, you can drill all you want, but you can't learn the game that way. And that's what the game is missing right now.
So like what's the best way to evaluate feel?
Evaluate it?
Yeah.
Oof.
Like as a prospect evaluator.
Yeah, I know. Shit. Like I'm trying to take my mind out of it. If I'm somebody that didn't play, that's the only way I know how to do stuff. Then I go look at guys who I think have great feel and see if there's any kind of similarities in that regard. Like that's the only way I would be able to do it, because I wouldn't know how else to evaluate it. I can look and see, oh, this guy knows how to play. You know what I mean? Versus, I think you guys can do that too. Like look for guys that know how to play basketball. You know what I mean? Like those guys that, that kind of, if I'm an evaluator, and I think it's dope, like find the guys who are like slept on, like find the guys who, some wing that can get a bucket, but maybe he's not 6'6", maybe he's 6'3", shit, but maybe he's, but he can hoop.
And then like maybe going more into like shooting specifically, right? Like there's certain players, not even like just becoming like Paul George was a great shooter coming out of Fresno State, but he couldn't like shoot a pull-up. And like he really developed that as like his handle like improved a lot. So how do you project guys like that? Like is that also work ethic, or are there other like factors that affect like outlier development?
Yeah, grinding. Shooting is now I'm a little, I don't know, biased, but like to me, if you're a guard, Paul George is different. It's like 6'10" or whatever. Like, I'm not mad he didn't have the handle / pull up initially. He's fucking 6'10". But guards, you've been a guard your whole life. So if you're struggling to shoot by the time we're going into the league, there are some you can make some changes. You can get better. But I just don't understand that. Like you should be able to shoot, because shooting is repetition, in my opinion. Like it's not just mechanical. I mean, it is very mechanically driven, but I feel like even I'm from an era where like dudes like Reggie Miller were the greatest shooters. He didn't have the most mechanically pleasing shot. That shit was cash. You know what I mean? So that's just reps to me. Like that's just dudes getting it in. And I mean, shit, if I'm being honest, all the basketball I played in my life, going into random YMCAs and random churches and shit like that, and there's always guys in there that like don't miss. And it's not they're like Steph Curry, Jay, but like this is all they've been doing their whole life, is shooting it this way, and it's cash. So like I think that's a big thing. And then there's a mental component. That's another thing. I don't know if we talked about Mike earlier, that you cannot evaluate. Some guys some guys understand, some guys learn and adapt, some guys can take the pressure, the heat of the moment, like that. All those things factor into shooting and playing. Like it's not just let me rep out 1,000 shots a day and make 1,000 shots. Now I can go and do it on an NBA court. Like, no, you got to be able to do that shit with all them, all the fans in there after you've missed 3 shots in a row, and Kevin Durant's looking at you like, yo, don't miss another shot. Like you have to be able to make those shots still. So like, there's a mental component to it as well, but
for handle development specifically, like I've seen like especially like Franz Wagner in recent times, like he's improved his handle a lot. Like Paul George, another guy, Kawhi, all these guys are like, maybe they have like outlier work ethics, but like what are like some traits that can help a guy like massively improve their handle in a short period of time?
Basketball is mirrors life. The work you put in is the work you get out. Now there's two different things. I could handle the ball. I didn't have handles though. Like those are different. And I think there's some nuance to that in terms of athleticism in general. There's some guys that are just born with, they just have the athleticism that you just can't teach. I feel, I may sound crazy to y'all, I feel that same way about dribbling and dribbling, passing, and shooting. I feel like innately some guys are just, they just have some shit that you can't teach. And the handle is the same way. I've met people that I think have great ball handling that repped it out, worked on it. And then I know people that are elite ball handlers, in my opinion, that are just like, yo, this is just how I dribble. Like, I don't really work on it like that, you know? And so, you know, I think you can get better at anything once you put the work in. And, you know, again, if you're able to apply it to a situation, you know, I can work on my handle all summer, you know, and now when I get when I get in the games, it's second nature. You know what I mean? When I'm on a break and I got to go XYZ way, it's just boom, boom, boom. It's just because I've been working on it. But there are others that are just gifted. You know what I mean? Like they just have it. And I think that's just part of sports in general. You know, some guys they just have it. So I think, you know, like a jump shot, you can rep it out, you can get better at it, but shit, some people just got it.
So could you elaborate a little more on like, what's the difference between like being able to handle versus having a handle?
Yeah, being able to handle are the guys you see, I mean, growing up, all the kids at the camps, they can do all the spider drills and two balls and all that shit. But like you put that heat on their ass in the game, they may or may not cough it up. Having handles is you're not even thinking about, you're playing basketball and the ball is just kind of, it's attached to you. Yeah, Kyrie's like that. Like clearly he's one of the greatest examples of that. Chris Paul, Steph. I think Steph has handles, but to me, so Kyrie to me was born with that shit. Steph to me grinded to his handles. Now I think he probably had a little bit of both. Like he probably was born with a little bit of handle, but like Steph work, and now it's second nature. Whereas I think Kyrie was just that he's just a freak. Like that's just, he could be playing at, you know, some random YMCA as a dude that never made it, and he would just have a crazy handle. And like again, this is the experience of playing basketball. I can go back 20 plus years and think of kids that I remember that had crazy handles or crazy hops, or a dude that just never missed. You know what I mean? Like I've encountered all these guys along the way. They didn't necessarily make it, but it's just, you know, a part of the game. So yeah, I would say that is the difference. The guys that don't have to think about shit.
Would you say there's like an element of decision making in handle where you have to like react to like maybe like a dig or like another defender coming to like double you? So is there a little bit of decision making, or do you think like development of handles, like it's largely just like the amount of work you put in, it's somewhat reminiscent to that, how much you get back?
Yeah, it's the feel for the game. This kind of always goes back to a lot of the questions we've been talking about. Like it's when you got handles and you're not thinking about it, when you're making that drive and that dig happens, instinctually you cuff it, or you're able to put it in a position where they can't get it, knowing that somebody might be behind you to be able to put it right back in it. It's just, you're just playing. You know what I mean? Like it's not anything that is something that like, oh shit, I drive right. If he digs, when you start thinking about playing, you're getting in your own way. And that's the beauty of basketball. It's like, you know, these guys are elite at what they do. And the elite of the elite are just playing. They're not thinking. And because, you know, you can get in your own way when you start thinking about stuff. So
you may have the feel and like the basketball IQ awareness, whatever you want to call it, to recognize like a passing lane, like where you could thread the needle. But I think it takes like a certain level of also confidence and like kind of assertive approach to actually execute that play.
Execute it. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually do it. You may see like the passing lane to go for the steal, but to actually go for the steal, you know, it takes. So I was thinking the high field players having that confidence, it could translate to other parts of the game. And like shooting is obviously, confidence is extremely important in shooting.
Exactly.
that's like a part of shooting that's really hard to kind of anticipate and project in translation. So I was thinking one way you could kind of indirectly project shooting is through finding high field players because they have confidence and that could.
Got you.
You see what I'm putting?
Yeah, no, 1,000,000%. I mean, the mental portion of basketball is arguably more important than everything else, you know. And confidence is, I put that in that same, you know, that same lane. Like, you got to have self-belief. You got to have an irrational. That's one thing when we went through the process this year, we were talking to teams. Like, that's one thing I told every team. I was like, Jake has irrational confidence, and you need that shit, bro. Because like, if you don't believe in you, if you don't love you, then who does? You know what I mean? And like, shit is gonna get tough. It's gonna be hard out here. You gotta be able to fall back on that I'm him mentality. You know, you just have to. And a lot of your greats have that in spades. And I agree with you, Mike. Like, if you know, I for sure when I'm rocking, like when I was in my prime and I was in the gym every day and I was rocking and rolling, and this is actually more post college. It's like my handle was tighter. My jump, I never missed jumps. You know, like everything just kind of flowed because there was this ultimate confidence in the work that I did and the experience that I had and the player that I've always been. Like I always get, I don't give it, even now, I'll give you a bucket. Don't get it fucked up. Like I will go get you a bucket. So like, so you know what I mean? So like, that's just who I am. You know what I mean? So yeah, you know, I think you're right in that approach. I think it's a pretty brilliant take on it because you're right. When guys feel good about themselves and their game, other portions, they feel good about the whole thing. You even see a player on the court sometimes. You see guys kind of doing stuff that maybe they shouldn't be doing, but shit, they feeling it. You know, they feeling themselves. So I do think that makes sense.
Would you say you were even better like after college, even though you weren't playing?
For sure.
What were you playing? Like, did you play like pro?
So I played a little bit. Yeah. So my journey was, I finished. I was trying to do stuff related to what I'm doing now. You know, more broadly, it's a different story for a different podcast. But but once I started to prep for trying to play overseas, yeah, man, like because it unlocked. You know, I was a role player in college, to be honest with you. You know, like I did well. I had success. We had success. But I wasn't him. Like I wasn't like, it wasn't like Reg, get the ball and just go to work. I was him in high school. You know, shit, if I'm being honest, I love Western Michigan University, changed my life. But I wouldn't have gone to Western Michigan University if I thought I was gonna be a role player. If I'm just being honest, like why would I do that? Like being recruited by a lot of schools. I just assumed how I play in high school will be how I play in college, you know? So it was a rude awakening when, I mean, that's a completely different conversation, but my coach wanted to run offense a certain way, or he wanted to, you know, he wanted me to make a certain amount of passes, or just in general, it was different, you know? So once I was able to kind of get away from college and really kind of focus back on the entirety of my game, because I was 3-and-D before 3-and-D was cool. Like that's what I did. Like I hit jump shots and I lock your ass up. Like that's what the team needed me to do. So once I was able to kind of get away from that, get back to handling the ball a little bit more, I was like playing combo guard in Germany. Like I was bringing the ball up and off ball. Like there were certain things that just kind of, it was dope because it's like all the work that I put in learning that role in college, like being an elite level shooter, coming off pin downs and screens and all that other shit, I was able to kind of implement into my game now, which was back in high school, I was coming off pick and roll. You know, I was more ISO, get a bucket, like all that stuff. So I just felt like a much more complete player after college because, you know, I had all those reps being a role player. And then I still had my skill set that, you know, just needed some polishing up from pre-college. So yeah, man, I definitely felt like a better basketball player after college, for sure.
My theory is just like the age curve is that even though you weren't playing,
the older you get, the more, the more experience, for sure. But yeah, I was, my primes were those mid-20s, man. In my opinion, I was a monster.
I think everybody's is almost like 90%. Everybody's the best, even if they're not playing in the league or in the whatever. They're still, I think, like 26, 27, 28 or something like that.
Yeah. No, I was doing it. I still had my bounce back, man. Those were the days, man. But yeah, man. Anytime you guys need me, bro, I'm around, man. You know that.
Thank you.
Mike,
Appreciate
you know that. Man,
Yeah,
never. You're my
yeah.
family, bro. So you need me anytime, I'm there, bro. And Av, good meeting you, bro.
That's meeting you too.
Reach out whenever, man, if you guys need anything or